You're tuned in to The Andrew Lawton Show.
One of the interesting discussions that came about was the comparison between Alberta and Quebec. Now, a lot of Alberta conservatives or Alberta independence-minded folks very much rejected this because they see Quebec as being the example of, just the greatest leech in Canada. That's the perception to a lot of Albertans. But one thing Quebec has done, or a number of things Quebec has done very well, is asserted its independence on things and said to the federal government, you know what, come and get me. And now, Quebec is a bit different because it has a language basis for its cultural identity, and that's a language basis that the government of Canada historically wants to accept, or at the very least is scared of. Nevertheless, Quebec has done what a lot of Albertans want to, which is bring a lot of things that are currently under federal jurisdiction into the provincial realm, whether it is a police force, whether it is a pension plan, or any number of policy areas. And Maxime Bernier, the leader of the People's Party of Canada, on whose show I actually appeared as a guest just a few days ago, he was one of the speakers. Now, he's a federalist. He's not from Alberta. They call him the Albertan from Quebec, but he's a guy who very much wants Canada to stay together. But he was saying that Alberta can learn from Quebec, which I found was interesting. And talking to some of the few attendees who were at this conference in person, it was interesting how a few of them actually had their backs up against the wall at first, but then they ended up being a little bit more receptive to it once they heard, oh yeah, there's a framework for this. We're not reinventing the wheel. Provinces have proven that it is possible. You just need the political will to do it. This was my conversation on Alberta independence with the so-called Albertan from Quebec, Maxime Bernier.
You've had for quite a while the nickname of the Albertan from Quebec, and it's actually interesting. You're embraced quite robustly here at these Freedom Talk conferences. And I wanted to ask you a little bit about what it is that Alberta and Quebec have in common, because I know that a lot of Albertans have a lot of resentment towards Quebec because of all the money that Quebec has taken in equalization over the years. But Quebec has also done, in a lot of ways, what Alberta keeps talking about wanting to do.
Yeah. What I said yesterday, it's important for us in Canada to know that we politicians in Canada be sure to know our Constitution and respect our Constitution. And the only way to have changes in this country is to have a radical decentralization, a downsize of the federal government. And actually, it will be good for Alberta, but like in Quebec, Quebecers are asking for more autonomy, and I think Albertans are asking for that. And the discussion that we had yesterday was about, is it good if Alberta has its own police force, own pension plan, own immigration selection system? I said, Quebec has that, and Quebec is doing that, so you can, because it's in line with our Constitution. So you have to do it. And you don't need to wait for having the approval from the federal government. Do it yourself. And each time the federal government will come with a national program that usually are unconstitutional, you'll be able to ask to opt out and having the money for that. So my goal was to tell them that what you want is doable at the provincial level. So elect a political party at the provincial level that believe in more autonomy for your province and do it, and don't ask any permission.
You said something interesting about that I hadn't really considered before, which was that the Bloc Québécois, which I think for many people, certainly in Canada outside of Quebec, is the face of the Quebec sovereigntist movement, the Bloc Québécois has done very little to advance Quebec's interests. You say it's all been done at the provincial level.
Yeah, absolutely, you're right. The Bloc Québécois did nothing to promote more decentralization. That was always the provincial government, liberal government or PQ government or ADQ government. They all believe, when you're a politician, you want to control, you want to have a lot of power. And that's what Quebecers politicians at the provincial level want. So the Bloc Québécois did nothing to promote the separatist movement during the 1980s or before or after that. That was the Quebec government who did all that. So that's why I'm saying, if you want a change at the federal level, don't vote for a kind of a Bloc Québécois party for Western Canada, because if you want a real change in this country, you'll need to say the same thing all across the country, to speak for every Canadian across the country. And so that's why I was saying, you know, don't vote for the Maverick Party. That's not the solution, because if you're really independentist and you want more autonomy, vote at the provincial level for the Wild Rose Independence Party.
A lot of people could accuse you of flirting with separatism when you talk about these things, but in actuality, you're proposing what many would argue is the original form of federalism, which was very strong provinces combined together in a federation with a federal government that has, relatively speaking, little power. You were in the think tank world, you've been in law, you've seen history. When did government get so big at the federal level? When did that really happen?
Well, it happened in the 1970s, and when you have the separatist movement in Quebec at that time, and also in Alberta at that time. Don't forget, Alberta elected a first separatist member of the Legislative Assembly in 1982. So Quebec and Alberta, they have the same idea. They are fighting for their autonomy. So your question about the Constitution and being sure to respect the Constitution, the federal government usually wants to have more visibility and is buying vote with money. And the best way to do that is to create a new program, a new national program. The best example is the scandal that we had in Quebec during the last referendum. Trudeau spent a lot of money in Quebec to try to change the vote over there. But it's always the same. The federal government think that, you know, if they don't show to their population that they're doing something for them, they won't be reelected. But the Constitution, the father of our country, they didn't see our federation like that. Like you just said, strong, sovereign province with their jurisdiction and their responsibilities, and the federal government must be in charge of money, international affairs, and all inter-provincial affairs also. So in the Constitution, you have usually a smaller government. But because of politics and politicians at the federal level that want to be reelected, try to create a new program that is against the Constitution. And they're doing that because they have the money also. And that's all the question of the spending power in Ottawa. They think that Canada and the federal government, with the surplus that they had during that time, they can spend money in exclusive provincial jurisdiction and with some condition. But that's unconstitutional. That power doesn't exist in the Constitution. The federal government doesn't have the right to spend money in provincial jurisdiction. So, and that was so important that in the Lac-Meach Accord, long time ago, Brian Mulroney put that. He said in this accord, I want the federal government to have the right to spend money into provincial jurisdiction, and they don't. So you need to change that. You need to be sure. And by the way, with what happened right now, with the discussion here in Alberta about the unity, the pipelines, and all that, and I think we'll have that discussion. We will have that discussion, and we want to put that debate in from the news.
And I think that's hugely important, because when you draw that contrast of Quebec and Alberta and all the things Alberta could do, pension plan, income tax collection, police force, these things.
Pension.
The difference is that Quebec has done all that while getting subsidized by the rest of the country, including Alberta, whereas Alberta is still doing the subsidizing. And Alberta can do all of that. But a lot of these discussions all lead back to equalization, which cannot be done unilaterally by a province. Do you see any way that the federal government, Liberal or Conservative, would take a redrawing, a reevaluation of equalization seriously?
I think they will have to do that today. What is the goal of the equalization formula? It's to be sure that every citizen living in Moncton or in Calgary will have the same level of service from the federal government, from their provincial government, So that's why they want to help everybody and having the same kind of living standard. So, but because of the recession right now, and maybe a depression, because Alberta is in a deep recession right now, in 2 years, they won't be able to give money to other provinces. So you have a kind of it's bad to say, but every province will be at the same poor level. And so you will need to have a discussion about equalization. You will need to have a discussion about how much money you're giving. And I think that will come. And at that time, we will be there, we at the PPC, to force that discussion and force provinces other provinces to develop their natural resources. You know, in Quebec, we receive equalization, but I don't believe Quebec is a poor province. And Quebecers don't believe that also. They just want to develop their natural resources, but the Quebec government say, no, we have a moratorium on shale gas, and if they develop their shale gas, they won't receive so much money from the equalization. So there's no incentive for Quebec, New Brunswick, or other provinces to develop their economy. I think that discussion will come, and that's why it's important. It's important for us at the BPC and for Canadians that I think they need our voice in Ottawa.
Thanks for listening to The Andrew Lawton Show. Support the program by donating to True North at www.tnc.news.